want to give a shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for all of the continued support. And I am done. Okay, so I just finished up reading Magician Master by Raymond E. Feist. This is the second book in the Riftwar saga, and I want to give you my unedited thoughts upon finishing this book, which was just right now. So this book is great. I love this book. It's a 4.5, and I wish I could give it 5, but there were some problems with it that prevent me from really giving it to that tier, but I really enjoyed this thing. This is the second part of the first real story. Originally, this book came out back in '82, and it was like one volume for the first and second books. So it was like, I think this first was like a trilogy. The Riftwar saga is very large. I don't know exactly how many books it is, but it's split up into a lot of like sub-series. Kind of like, I think, like Realm of the Elderlings is. And I think it was a trilogy. Now it's split up into 4 books. And I don't know why it was ever not split up, because later on they split the first one into 2, and it makes so much sense for this to be split into 2. Because it feels like 2 totally different books. I mean, there is this time jump between the first and second one, majorly different stuff going on, and the break just felt perfect. And the fact that that break happened and split the book essentially into 2 equal parts just feels like it naturally should have always been 2. So yeah, so I started off this book and I was not enjoying myself. I would say I was like in the 2.5, maybe 3 range in terms of my score. It was just okay. And it was just okay without spoiling anything, because there was so much change in between the first and second book with the characters, change that I did not enjoy. Now, I have said many times that I love the bravery of an author that will institute large time jumps in their story. It makes things feel more epic to me when I know that there's like a multi-generational thing going on here. I love it. The Greenbone Saga did it recently. I love that kind of thing. Just love it to bits. And that happened here. And this happened a long time ago. So maybe that was even more brave when it happened back then. And in some ways it worked, and in some ways it didn't. The parts that it didn't work is that the characters, again, without spoiling anything, are super different. Something major happens to the 2 main characters of this series, to the point where they're like shells of their former self and like totally different people. And I didn't like these people as much. I wanted the kids that I got from the first book, but I didn't get that. And that was frustrating. Now, there is a now famous author, very famous, who instituted a very similar change with their character that I also didn't love a lot. And I don't want to say more than that, because then I feel like it would spoil things. But if you've read this or just don't care about spoilers, come join my Discord, links down below, and I would love to spoil the heck out of it and talk to you about what I'm talking about here. But it felt like that modern author very much borrowed, in a good way, not like a stealing way, but borrowed the concept for their modern works. But it was in those books, it wasn't like the main character, and these it is. And so, yeah, I didn't love that. Now, it changes later on. It doesn't quite go back, but we get out of the big difference, and then we get back kind of, the story writes itself at a certain point, not very far in, probably about a third of the way through the book. And so after that first third didn't love, but the second third and the third third, I feel like there's better words for this. I don't know them right now. But they're just wonderful, and everything that I wanted out of this. In fact, both of the main characters kind of revert back into being characters that I thoroughly appreciated more. And we got back to that epic feel to the story. It felt like we were back to that awesome worldwide, major epic fantasy that I really wanted, where there was this kind of clear delineation between the good guys and the bad guys. Now, I love a lot of gray stuff, but that gray stuff is kind of a more modern thing. I recognize that some old books kind of did that thing, but, this is an old book. And, 82, I don't think that was a big thing back then. But so I wanted that central conflict to come back, and then we got it. And then I just had a blast. And it makes me so happy about where this series is headed, because I've heard from a lot of people, when I talk about this in my Discord, they say, look, these first couple books, they're good, but the next couple are fantastic. So, look, if I'm feeling this way about these first 2, then yeah, I can't wait, because there's been a lot of time since this book was written, but it holds up. It really does. Not just for the people that have read this before and fell in love with the series. I've heard from a lot of people that have told me, this is the book that, kindled their love for fantasy. And they're worried about going back and reading it because, they'll have that old feeling that might get crushed, and that's just not the case. So if you're ever thinking about rereading this thing and you've been worried, yeah, cut that out. It's awesome. I love so much in this book that this book ends and I just truly have no idea where the next one's going to go. Because in the first book when it ended, it was obvious, very obvious that it's kind of ending a bit on a cliffhanger. Where are we going now? And I just love it so much when a book ends and I know that there's more books to come, but it feels like the conflict's over. It feels like everything's done, but it's clearly not. Maybe there's another conflict. I don't know. But the fact that it's captured my imagination like this and I just don't know where things are going is awesome. And yeah, there's a lot of series that I'm reading right now. And I won't say that this is like the #1 series I'm reading that I'm looking forward to reading the next ones and really just captures my imagination, but it's up there. When my TBR clicks around and this third book in this series pops up, I couldn't be more happy and excited to get down to it. So, I recognize I haven't made this review very long. I'm going to cut it out there. I don't think there's much more to say. I honestly think every fan of fantasy needs to go read this series. There's not really a fantasy fan out there, I feel like, that this isn't built for. If you're into that old school kind of thing, look, you've already read this. But if you haven't, if you like this classic, hero's quest, if you're looking for something that really captures that Lord of the Rings kind of vibe, but in a better way, for me, then this is the book for you. If you like more modern stuff that's dark and gritty and, you can't tell the difference between good and bad and, a lot of the modern take on things, I still think you're going to have a good time in this. Even though it's not, because there is some of those elements kind of sneaking out there. It's just a really, really well done book by an awesome author, and I can't wait to keep going. Now, I know that later on, this sub-series kind of splits off into some other things. One of them is co-written by Janny Wurts. I think that's her name. And I'm really excited about that because I've heard so many good things about that author. And the fact that I have this series that I'm really into with this author that I've heard so many good things about by so many people that I trust just spells really positive things for my enjoyment going forward. And I just can't wait. So I'm going to end things there. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, happy reading to you. I want to give another shout out to all of my patrons with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier patrons, Anna, Ben, Brian, CJ, Danute, Darren, Evan, Jamie, Maria, Michael Sugarman, My Book is Lit, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, Romeo Mike, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Sky, and Zion.